April 5th, 1956, Fort Wayne, Indiana. The Philadelphia Warriors walk into War Memorial Coliseum up 2-1. But that lead's fragile because they still haven't won in this building. Fort Wayne already stole Game 2 here by 1 point. The Pistons still have George Yardley, Larry Faust, Mel Hutchins, Corky Devlin, and a crowd that thinks this series can turn. Right in the middle of it is Jack George, not the loudest name in the matchup, and not the future Hall of Famer that everybody remembers first, but the guard who had to keep Philadelphia organized when the road got tight. By the end of the night, George scores 20 points, hits all 12 of his free throws, adds 6 rebounds and 5 assists, and helps Philadelphia leave town with a 107-105 win and a 3-1 series lead in the finals. The Warriors finally broke through in Fort Wayne. Welcome back to the Warrior 100. I'm documenting one game per player till I reach 100. Today is Warrior 06, and the lens is Jack George in Game 4, the 1956 NBA Finals. Philadelphia Warriors at Fort Wayne Pistons, April 5, 1956. Philadelphia entered the postseason as the Eastern Division winner at 45-27 under first-year head coach George Sineski. Fort Wayne won the West at 37-35 under Charlie Ekman. The Warriors beat Syracuse to reach the finals, and the Pistons beat St. Louis. By the time this game tipped, Philadelphia led the series 2-1 after wins in Game 1 and 3, while Fort Wayne had taken Game 2 at home by a single point. So this isn't a casual middle chapter. This is the hinge game. If Philly wins, the title is basically in the front seat on the ride home. If Fort Wayne wins, the series is tied and the pressure flips completely. Of course, we didn't have microphones in the locker room, so this is all conjecture. Philadelphia probably felt confident and not quite comfortable. The Warriors had the better record, the more explosive offense, and Paul Arizon's in the middle of a huge run. But they also know Fort Wayne has been a house of pain for them. One road win here changes everything. One road loss here turns this into a best of 3 with momentum leaning the wrong way. So the Warriors' mood isn't relaxed, it's focused, professional, get one in this building, and end the argument. Fort Wayne, meanwhile, is desperate without being doomed. They already proved in Game 2 that Philly can bleed. They have the crowd, the familiarity, and one of the best scoring forwards in basketball in George Yardley. The Pistons likely felt like this: survive tonight, and the whole geometry of the finals changes. And that's what makes this game good. Both teams have a rational reason to believe. The broader NBA context matters here because 1955-56 was still a young league figuring out what modern pro basketball could look like. It was the 10th NBA season, just 8 teams deep, and the league was thriving in the second season after the shot clock changed the sport. NBA.com's season review says scoring jumped to 99 points per team per game, and that quickness and athletic ability were suddenly at a premium. Bob Pettit, in St. Louis's first season after moving from Milwaukee, became the league's first official MVP, and Maurice Stokes won Rookie of the Year. So this finals week is happening in a league that's getting faster, cleaner, more television-friendly, and more recognizable. That matters for this game because Philadelphia is one of the clearest examples of where this league is going. Arizon's jump shooting, Johnston's efficient interior scoring, Gola's all-around game, Jack George's playmaking, all functioning in a space that barely existed just a couple of years prior. The sideline matchup is sharp. George Sineski had been a Warriors player for years before taking over as coach, then immediately won 45 games and an Eastern Division title in his first season at the helm. Charlie Ekman came from officiating into coaching and had Fort Wayne back in the finals for the second straight year. So this isn't old emperor versus old emperor. It's 2 basketball lifers, one a Warriors guard and one a former top referee, each trying to impose order on a nervous championship series. And the floor is loaded. Philadelphia has future Hall of Famers Paul Arizon, Neil Johnston, and Tom Gola. Fort Wayne has future Hall of Famer George Yardley. Arizon is already a scoring force and later Hall of Fame jump shot pioneer. Johnston is one of the dominant early NBA centers, built around that sweeping hook shot. Gola arrives as a rookie, but already he has the resume of one of the greatest college players ever. Yardley is the Pistons' elegant scorer, the kind of player who makes the game feel modern before the modern game completely arrives. Around them are more stars of the era: Larry Faust, Mel Hutchins, Andy Phillip, Joe Grogowski, Ernie Beck. This is one of those old finals that looks dusty from far away, but stacked when you actually stop to read the names. As for personal rivalry, these teams saw each other 9 times in the regular season, taking the season series 5-4, and then met 5 more times in the finals. Well, that's a lot of exposure in 1 year. By this point, they know each other's pet actions, favorite spots, and emotional tells. The connective tissue here is less, these rosters are full of shared former teammates, and more, these are 2 division rivals from tough industrial basketball cities, playing each other over and over and over until only one is left. I don't see a major active roster crossover, but the commonality is repetition, familiarity, and postseason consequence. Jack George is a fascinating warrior for this project because his story is bigger than basketball without becoming separate from basketball. He's born in Swissvale, Pennsylvania, grew up in Washington, started St. John's College High School, and was such a ridiculous all-around athlete that the Washington Post later recalled time calling him the boy wonder of the nation's capital. He played basketball and baseball at LaSalle, led the basketball team in scoring in 1950-51. He was an All-American catcher who hit .449 during LaSalle's 1951 baseball title season. He then spent time in the Army and built an 8-season NBA career with the Warriors, then the Knicks. He wasn't some specialty guard. He was the kind of athlete who seems custom-built for a 1950s newspaper feature. Basketball, baseball, football, tennis, track. The whole deal. And in 1955-56, he hit the sweet spot of his pro career. He was an all-star, made All-NBA, ranked in the league's top 10 in assists, again, and led the NBA in total minutes played. That tells you the job description immediately. He was trusted, durable, and central. The Warriors had bigger scorers and more glamorous names, but Jack George is one of the men who made the machine function. That's why this game mattered to him. Not because it's his single biggest point total, and not because it made him the face of the franchise, but because it was a pressure game that showed his value in full. Enough scoring to hurt you, enough poise to settle a team, and enough nerve to go 12 for 12 from the line on the road with the finals in the balance. The game opens even. The line score tells you that immediately. 24-24 after 1 quarter. Nobody blinks yet. Philadelphia gets a rise and going, because of course they do. Fort Wayne answers behind the core that got them here. Then the second quarter tilts towards the Pistons. They win at 32-26 and take a 56-50 halftime lead. Now there's your dramatic turn. Fort Wayne is home, up by 6 points, and feeling the building come alive. The Warriors, they're suddenly in danger of losing control of the room completely. Yardley's productive, Faust is productive, Frankie Bryant gives them scoring. Philadelphia has offense, but not separation. The Pistons have the exact game shape they wanted, close enough for their stars and slow enough for their crowd to matter. And with the scoreboard telling Philly, they still hadn't solved Fort Wayne on the road. This is where Jack George becomes important in a very 1950s point guard way. Not flashy or theatrical, stabilizing. He doesn't have to be the leading scorer in the first half. He has to keep the Warriors from becoming frantic. He has to keep Arisen fed, keep Gola connected, keep Johnson from disappearing, and make sure the game is still winnable when the fourth quarter arrives. That matters because some stars explode, and some players preserve the conditions for the explosion. George, in this one, is the second type. Even before the finish, the shape of his night is already there. He's not shooting brilliantly, but he's keeping the offense alive and collecting points at the line. Then Philadelphia starts doing champion math. The Warriors take the third quarter 30-26, and that's not a knockout punch. It's a steady reclamation. The halftime deficit of 6 is cut to 2, 82-80 heading into the fourth. Then Arisen keeps pressing, Goal is efficient, Johnston stays involved, George keeps manufacturing value. The Pistons still have answers. Yardley finishes with 21, Bryan and Faust each have 19. Devlin has 14 and Hutchins 13. But the important thing is that Philly has recentered the game. Fort Wayne no longer owns the terms. It's now a 2-point game with 1 quarter left, which is exactly where the higher-end road team wants to be. The fourth quarter goes 27-23 to Philadelphia. And the reason this game belongs in Jack George's folder is that a lot of road finals wins get decided by nerve more than beauty. George finishes with 20 points on just 4 field goals because he keeps getting to the line and he keeps making every free throw. All 12. No misses. That's a pressure performance, not just a scoring line. Horizon gives you 30, Gola gives you 19, and Johnston 18. But George's night feels like the adult hand on the steering wheel. Fort Wayne still has one last chance, and the best surviving local account says Corky Devlin got a shot at the end that barely missed at the buzzer. That detail is perfect, not a collapse or blowout. A title contender surviving by inches on the road. For Philadelphia, this was the game that turned into a competitive finals, into a near-certain championship. It gave the Warriors a 3-1 lead, broke what the AP described as a 4-year jinx in Fort Wayne, and moved the pressure almost entirely onto the Pistons. Once Philly stole this one, the title became less about possibility and more about execution. 2 days later, they did execute, winning Game 5 in Philadelphia 99-88 behind Joe Grabowski's 29, Horizon's 26, and Jack George's 10 assists. So if you're reading the season arc, April 5th is where the door swings open, and April 7th is where the Warriors walk through. For Fort Wayne, this is the game where the margin of error finally disappears completely. They've already shown they can win in this series. They'd already protected home court once. They had the crowd, the stars, and the halftime lead. Still they lost, and that's brutal for them, because it means the problem wasn't access. The problem was their ceiling. They're good enough to make the finals, back-to-back seasons, but not good enough to take command against the very best team left. The Pistons would finish this season as Western Division champions and finals runner-up, again. But Game 4 is where that future gets written. A new Hoops fan could get hooked on this game because it's a clean, old-school answer to the question, what is playoff basketball really? Not just highlights. It isn't just the best player. It's the accumulation of pressure. A tied first quarter, a home team surge, a road team recalibrating, a star scorer doing star scorer work, and a point guard living at the foul line. A final possession that almost flips everything back, and because it's 1956, you can still see the league teaching itself how to be itself. The stars are recognizable, the scoring's brisk, the stakes are simple. Win tonight, and the championship's in reach. Lose tonight, and the floor starts sliding out from underneath you. That's basketball in a form that almost everybody can understand. AP covers described Philadelphia as breaking a 4-year jinx in Fort Wayne by winning 107-105 and taking a 3-1 series lead. A later Fort Wayne historical account remembered the same night as one where Philadelphia broke the jinx, with Horizon's 30 points carrying the scoring load and Devlin's late shot barely missing the buzzer. So the post-game mood is this: relief in Philadelphia, disbelief in Fort Wayne, and the sense that one building had finally stopped being cursed for the visiting team. There isn't much season to recap left after Game 4, which is part of why this game is so satisfying as a script centerpiece. Philadelphia returns home and closes the series in Game 5 on April 7th, 2 days later, winning 99-88 and securing their franchise's second title. NBA.com season review casts the 1955-56 Warriors as one of the league's defining up-tempo teams, powered by Horizon, rookie Tom Gola, veteran Neil Johnston, and the backcourt work of Gola and Jack George getting Horizon the ball. Fort Wayne's season ends in a very respectable 37-35, taking their division in a season that would see them simply run into a better offensive team in the finals. So after this game, there isn't any dramatic plot twist, just confirmation. The Warriors were the best team left, and now they were one win from proving it. For Jack George personally, this game sits inside the peak band of his career. The Warriors win the title 2 days later. George gets the ring, the All-Star nod, and the All-NBA selection for the 1955-56 season. He keeps building a solid reputation as a smart, durable, playmaking guard before being traded to the New York Knicks in 1959. He retires after the 1960-61 season. Off the floor, the afterlife of this story is unusually human. The Washington Post said he moved to Illinois after retirement to work as a sales consultant for an office machine company. He then moved to Florida in 1986. The same profile and the people quoted in it remembered him as less a self-mythologizing ex-pro than a humble, gifted all-around athlete who got along with everybody. He died in 1989 at the age of 60 after a short bout with cancer. That matters for the whole episode because it lets you end Jack George not as a forgotten statistical artifact, but as a real kind of sports figure that we don't manufacture as often anymore. The truly multi-sport American athlete who happened for one spring to be an NBA champion point guard. Next time we leave 1956 pro basketball and jump to Astro 31, Alan Ashby, October 6, 1981. Different sport, different pressure, different kind of damage. Here the point guard held the line. Next episode, we move behind the plate and into October baseball, where the job is less about tempo and more about survival. That was Warrior 06, Jack George, April 5, 1956. Not the loudest Warrior, not the most famous Warrior, but on a night when Philadelphia needed composure, foul shot nerve, and a grown man backcourt control in a building that had haunted them, Jack George gave them exactly that. The Warriors walked into Fort Wayne carrying a 2-1 lead, and they walked out carrying the finals. 2 days later, they carried the championship.